Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's great to see people already here. I think we're going to give a few more minutes to let everybody trickle in. I don't know if you're able to show your video. That might be nice. So it can be as much of a discussion as possible. Hi there. It's so wonderful to see everybody in this breakout session and have everyone join. I know it's pretty early, depending on where you are in the world. So we're gonna wait a couple of minutes to let people trickle in. But you're welcome to share your video. That way we can see you, put the face to the name. We really want this to be a dynamic and pretty informal discussion. All right, Emma, what do you think? Do you think we should get started?
Yeah, I think maybe if we want to start with introductions and then maybe around 8:30 or a little after you can start with your presentation.
All right, that sounds great. Okay, so I'm happy to go first. We can introduce ourselves and then I have a very short presentation that's just 5 minutes or so highlighting some of what my lab works on and our thoughts on aging with questions, hopefully to stimulate further discussion. And if you guys have your own questions, please ask questions along the way and also type them in the chat room. So if you feel comfortable to share your video, you can do that as well. But I'll go first with introduction. My name is Marcia Haigis. I'm a professor in the Department of Cell Biology. I did my undergrad training at UNH. I never thought I wanted to be a researcher. I didn't know what research was. And then I did my PhD in biochemistry at the University of Wisconsin. And now I'm at Harvard Medical School studying the molecular mechanisms of aging in a variety of systems ranging from cancer to immunity. And it's really a great pleasure to be here today. So I'm just gonna tag Bern, you're next to me. So if you wanna go next, I'll just go in the order on my screen.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, and if you could say where you're from, what your career stage is, and what your interest is.
Yeah, I will. So my name is Bengt Bern. I have a Master of Science in Physics, and I'm the CEO, founder of In Vivo Power. So we are a company that do transcutaneous energy transfer system for artificial hearts and also mechanical circulatory support. So cardiovascular disease is a big problem for aging population, and there's a limitation of donor for heart transplant. So there's a lot of development going on for artificial hearts. Yeah, I will stop there. Thank you.
Wonderful. Stephen Treaster, you're next.
Hello, I'm Stephen. I'm a postdoc at Boston Children's Hospital and Harvard Medical School. My lab is interested in the genomics of exceptional longevity. We've been mining genomic variation in really long-lived animals. because in a sense that these animals have already figured out how to resist aging and age-related diseases. And so then we're taking lessons we can learn from them and applying them to conventional models to try and make them live longer and healthier.
Wonderful. Alessandro, Effie?
Sorry, this is Elena. This is my. I just realized that the Zoom is on my my husband's name. So our project is we are trying to look for the new biomarkers in the retina in order to diagnose much earlier than what's currently available neurodegenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's disease, cerebral small vessel disease. We're specifically focusing on retinal imaging technology and the combination of those, and trying to discover the early biomarkers so we can cut down on the costs of the early diagnosis for those neurodegenerative disorders.
Wonderful. Next is Alan Lee.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I can't turn my video on, but
That's okay.
I hope you can all hear me well. I'm from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. I'm a geriatric psychiatrist. I'm a clinical assistant professor at the CUHK. So my research area is mainly dementia and also late life depression. My research areas includes we look at the prevalence of dementia in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, we have one of the highest, longest life expectancy in the world. In fact, about 2 years ago, we officially beat Japan in terms of having the longest life expectancy. So we are having a rapidly aging population in Hong Kong. So dementia is a huge issue here. And so that's my research area. We look at the prevalence, we look at the risk factors, and explore some novel interventions, try to reduce people's risks of developing dementia.
Thank you. Lawrence Chung.
Hi, so my name's actually Jacqueline Lam. I'm using my husband's Zoom, and I'm from the University of Hong Kong. So we are the 2021 awardees, and we are using AI to identify a combination of drugs that can cure Alzheimer's disease at the early stage. So that's what that's part of our project, and we're very excited that this is our first attempt. We have won the award. We're very, very lucky, together with our PI, who is Professor Victor O'Kelly from the University of Hong Kong.
Wonderful. Next is Ricardo.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ricardo. I am a professor at the Universidad de los Andes in Bogota, Colombia. I'm interested in cerebrovascular disease and finding novel pharmacological targets to address the issue of intracranial aneurysms, because currently the only way to treat those aneurysms is through surgery. So the idea is to find medications that can modify the course of the disease. And I am also very interested in health literacy in aged populations to help these communities to better handle the healthcare services and achieve better cardiovascular outcomes.
Wonderful. So first, I think that people are going to join in and out. That's the nature of the breakout session. But we want to have as interactive of a session as possible. And so first, I just want to say congratulations to all of you. It's really exciting that you can be part of this Healthy Longevity Grand Challenge, and it was really competitive. So congratulations to everybody. It's really great to see people who are ensconced in the aging field, as well as newbies to the aging field. And so later we hope to talk about career advice and how do you build a career in aging and what are the limitations. But first, I just want to share my screen and share a few slides to hopefully jumpstart some of our discussion here. And so I'm going to play my show. Does everybody see this? All right. So we're in the midst of a silver tsunami where by 2034 in the US, older adults aged greater than 65 are actually projected to outnumber children in the US. And this is not just a phenomenon in the US, but as was mentioned already, in other countries, this is already happening. And why is this so concerning, or why is this a society impact area? Well, aging is a major risk factor for the major human diseases shown here. You can see increased disease prevalence with age. And taking a zoom, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our work in cancer as just an example of some of the research that we're doing and ongoing in the field of aging. Aging is the primary risk factor for most cancers. So shown here are male and female lung cancer patients with increased age risk incidence in lung cancer. And already by age 45 to 50 is when you see that inflection point increase exponentially. Despite this, we still use young animal models to study mechanisms and treatments for cancer. And furthermore, age is not really a major factor or a concern in clinical studies of cancer therapy. It's not just lung cancer. If you look across many different types of tumor, you can see this. What's also cool is I think that you can notice there's an exponential increase in cancer with age, but then with high age, there is this decrease of cancer risk. And so molecularly, we don't understand what accounts for either. And shown in the arrow again is this age 45 to 50. And so my lab and many others are particularly interested in understanding molecular mechanisms of cancer. And this is an image from The Hallmarks of Cancer by Weinberg and Hanahan. And you can see many different mechanisms of tumorigenesis, and cancer biologists have been able to target many of these mechanisms with inhibitors of signaling, immune activators, telomerase inhibitors, etc. What's really amazing is that when you compare this to the hallmarks of aging, there are a lot of similarities here. And so one question is, are there any mechanistic links between the hallmarks of aging and the hallmarks of cancer? And do any of those account for increased tumorigenesis with age? And this is still something we don't understand. So on one hand, as a scientist interested in healthcare who cares about the population, this is a really troubling problem. We have this silver tsunami. More people than ever are going to be aged in our society, so this is good news. But the worrisome aspect is more people than ever could be at risk for cancer and age-associated disease. So how can we as scientists contribute to addressing this health crisis? And one thing I want to talk about is what are the pathways that change with age and contribute to diseases of aging, such as cancer? How do we go about discovering what these pathways are and actually thinking about how to apply that to improve the lives of individuals? And so in my lab, we're interested, my training was in molecular biology and protein chemistry. So I'm a chemist by training, and I like to think about the molecules and mechanisms. And so you guys are all familiar with the central dogma, DNA to RNA to protein. Well, I think about the fourth arm of the central dogma, which are metabolites. And proteins, actually 25% of proteins in our body or so, actually actively regulate metabolite pools in our cells. But more than that, our bodies and cells are sensitive to environmental cues like stress and diet and age to affect metabolite pools. And these metabolites go on to regulate proteins through allosteric regulation or even chromatin and gene expression through epigenetic regulation. And so how do we take these molecular pathways and study mechanisms of cancer? In the last 10 or 15 years, my lab has really studied cancer in 4 levels. So first, we, like many others, study tumor cell autonomous pathways, but then we're interested in cell-to-cell interactions, tissue interactions, as well as how systemic things like age and individual health contribute to tumorigenesis. I'll just give 2 short examples. So first, we were interested in mechanisms of cancer, and my lab has really focused on this area. And we asked a new question, which is when tumor cells consume many fuels to grow, they consume amino acids like glutamine and generate the byproduct ammonia. Well, a mystery in cancer biology was understanding the fate of this ammonia. And so Jessica Spinelli, a student in my lab, used a mass spectrometry method, and we actually mapped out a new metabolic pathway in tumor cells where the ammonia accumulates in the tumor microenvironment and is taken up by cancer cells and recycled to make amino acids that tumors need to grow and proliferate and survive. And this is in contrast to what we thought before, which is ammonia is simply secreted from cells and cleared by the urea cycle and excreted as waste. And another final example where we studied how systemic metabolism contributes to tumorigenesis, we're asking how does age and obesity contribute to tumor risk? And we know that I showed you that age is a major risk factor. Obesity is also a major risk factor. And this is a summary slide from the New England Journal of Medicine written by Jeff Rathmel, this figure. And basically in this study, we showed that obesity causes tumors to burn more fats. And this actually depletes fats in the tumor microenvironment and starves the T cells and impairs their function. And that you could restore anti-tumor immunity in the setting of obesity by toggling metabolic genes that regulate fat oxidation. And so I just want to end with some thought questions. And so I'll put out there, we should aim to harness our ability to modify aging in a meaningful way to delay, prevent, or reverse aging phenotypes tightly linked to pathogenesis of an array of human diseases. And I want to pose to you guys, how can this be achieved? Should we do this? And what are the society impacts? And I want to thank you for your attention. And there were many people in the lab that did this work. We have a wonderful array of collaborators, including Arlene Sharp, Joshua Binowitz, Steve Gigi, Craig Thompson, Clary Cleish, Peter Sorger. And I'm thankful for funding. And some of our work is sponsored by Agilent and Roche Pharmaceuticals. So thank you guys. I'm going to stop share and just, have this question up here. And I can actually copy and paste it for the chat. And so, this hour, this 30 minutes or so we have left, it's for you. We can talk about these questions, but we can also talk about any questions that you guys have. Exactly. And you can type them in the chat, but it's a small enough group. So just go ahead and speak up.
So Marcia, thank you for your wonderful sharing. And I always have a question because we have just started our research on Alzheimer's disease using AI methods. And are there showing any similarities between aging and neurodegenerative disease? Supposedly it would be very close. But in terms of your work on cancer, I suppose it is also linked to some certain extent to Alzheimer's disease. So have you actually looked at the a normal cell of a normal person, and how does it differ in terms of cancer cell and the cell of those people who suffer from Alzheimer's disease? I'm just as curious as someone else.
That's such a great question. That's such a great question. So first of all, Alzheimer's disease is a major and important factor. It's an important crisis in our society, especially with the increase in aging populations. But there are so many opportunities still, right? So for instance, if we just think about the metabolic arm, we know that glutamine metabolism and glutamate metabolism are so important for excitatory pathways in neurons, but still we don't understand completely the role metabolism plays in neurodegenerative diseases. And in fact, in some of our GWAS studies, we can find a lot of SNPs for fat metabolism pathways, and APOE is a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease as well, which would directly regulate how lipids are used. So I think that there are a lot of opportunities. And you also raised another question about this comorbidity, coincidence, and multiple diseases. How does a patient having Alzheimer's, how does that affect risk factor for obesity, metabolic disease, or cancer, right? Yeah. And vice versa. I think that there are a lot of important areas to look at. So
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great that you're working there. Anyone else have any comment there? It's a question for everybody.
Sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
So she asked about mechanisms in Alzheimer's disease, and also how does, what's the interaction between Alzheimer's disease and cancer or other diseases? And has anybody studied differences in cancer pathways in patients with Alzheimer's disease?
Yeah, because my collaborator actually worked in this area, and she has been working on the cancer pathway for a long time. She's from Israel, and it seems that there is some strong correlation relationship between Alzheimer's disease and cancer, and yet we would not just explore this pathway. So we try to explore as many pathways associated with the Alzheimer's disease as possible, apart from cancer. That's what we are doing right now, but we would love to hear more about the mechanism, because at the moment it seems that most of the discussions are about APOE, about the tau pathway or the A-beta amyloid pathway, and yet we are at a very early stage of understanding how actually the mechanism works. So we love to hear more from you. You are the experts in this field, and yet we are in the AI emerging to incorporate more of this information to help the people in need. Yeah.
Can I ask you guys a question? Can you just raise your hands if you're new to the aging fields? So there are some people. Other questions out there for each other or me?
I just wanted to comment on what Jacqueline was mentioning and you were mentioning, Marcia. I had the privilege of meeting you, Marcia, a while ago in one of the molecular biology of aging courses at Wood School. And I remember that there were a couple of talks, one by Rick Miramoto in Northwestern University, I think it's at Northwestern, and he was talking about proteostasis, which may be a common link between cancer and Alzheimer's disease. Obviously, there are many different pathways that can be related to the two diseases, but I think proteostasis is quite interesting because he was mentioning about the deficiencies on protein metabolism during aging and how that is conducing to protein aggregation, which obviously is a hallmark of Alzheimer's disease, but it may be also related to some of the alteration in pathways in cancer.
That's a great point. I like to think about all of these hallmarks of aging as kind of edges of a spider web, right? And they're kind of all connected. So if you pull on proteostasis, you're going to affect maybe cell signaling, protein turnover, metabolism, and many other things. So even though we like to think about one pathway at a time, sometimes it's really like interwoven. Hi, Pinghua, welcome. Welcome to the breakout room. Do you want to introduce yourself briefly? Oh, we can't hear you.
Thank you very much for giving us the information about what you're doing. Yes, I'm new to the aging field because I'm a chemist, actually. So what we do is recently, in the last few years, we use worm to screen for activities. We identify a few compounds that significantly extend lifespan. I mean, that's how we get started to get into this area. And then we move to mouse studies. And one of them, actually, we get a compound that mouse studies extend lifespan by 40%, the median lifespan. I have a question. I mean, one of the reasons that I'm interested, it's the APOE you're talking about, right? I mean, I saw some reports say they might be related to a lot of things and also related to aging. But it turned out that we have the transcriptome results coming out from the compound that we have. We saw the downregulation of APOA, APOC. Are those also important? I mean, like I said, I'm a chemist.
Do you want to comment first, Jacqueline?
Actually, APOE has proven to have, is linked to tau and also linked to beta. There are different results. We are an emerging field. We still believe that APOE could be one of the possible cause, but now it's quite confirmed it is. But I'm not too sure whether we can find something else which we believe we can. That's why we kickstart this research to find out more. And there are many works already done in this area about APOE, how APOE regulates these down regulates these tau. But I believe that this is still very downstream because we show that there are many areas that we still don't understand some of the APOE. They actually improves with the presence of APOE. I can't remember which two actually improves the situation of tau, actually binds with the tau, and therefore it would not result in the tau fossilization. So there are certain special species of APOE that would be particularly bad to the tau. So there are different species, and therefore we need to separate the good one from the bad one.
I think there are a lot of different isoforms of APOE,
Yes.
A, C, etc.
Yes.
And when I see transcriptional data, I also look for like trends in the pathways. And we usually don't use KEGG analysis for a lot of things, but we try to make our own terms because a lot of the pathways are not super well annotated. And so we use both ways. Yeah. Any other questions for you guys?
Just a question about the cancer pathway, because when we look at the direction, when they turn from a gene, as you mentioned, the pathway to a protein, and then would they work in the reverse order? I mean, can they work to
that
gene to a normal gene?
Yeah, thank you. That cartoon schematic, that DNA to RNA to protein, that's the central dogma in all of our cells, right? That is not just for cancer, but it can be in any cell. And so I wanted to raise up this new point and welcome, Victor. It's so nice to see you here.
I'm just traveling through space.
Wonderful, wonderful. We won't ask you to introduce yourself because I think everybody knows you.
Well, no, I'm just supporting you, Marcia.
So good to see you.
Okay,
so we were
keep going.
So we were talking about the central dogma in cells, and I had a slide that put in metabolites as the fourth arm of the central dogma. And so it's just simply to raise the point that people kind of historically forget about the role of metabolites in cells in the central dogma, but 25% of our proteome contributes to either transporting metabolites or making metabolites. So it's kind of the fingerprint of your central dogma. But more than that, depending on your diet or your exercise or environment or age, that also feeds into that. Those metabolites can affect your protein function, but they can also affect gene expression through epigenetics.
Thank you.
Yeah. Victor, we're just asking questions and discussing different connections to human disease and aging. And what kind of questions or advice do you have for the field? And we have a lot of new scientists here and people new to the aging field.
Yeah, so I was trying to be a fly on the wall. You caught me.
Okay.
No, I think this is such an exciting field, Marcia, really exciting. You know, as you heard, it ranged from metabolites, metabolic pathways, epigenetics, many things people think about the genome itself. I think some of the more recent development on partial reprogramming is very exciting. The fact that you can actually take a cell and put it down to clock zero, you know, there's so much opportunity. That's why we're so excited about this and want to get as many people involved as possible, because after all, it is the biggest question for humanity next to climate change, right? And so we call this a grand challenge for that reason. And Marcia is an active member of this. And, you know, she does a lot of great research. And I just want you guys to have the chance to interact with her and with other people to exchange your ideas. So let me not interrupt. And I just want to listen to you. So go ahead. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
So I want to ask you guys a question. And you know, keep typing your questions in the chat. But I want to ask you, what do you see as limitations to your own career or research in the field of aging?
I could say that is funding. And actually, I was going to ask you about that because you were mentioning that you, in your last slide, you get funding from the National Institute of Health, but you also have support from some other places like Roche, I think is one that you mentioned. So what is your advice to try to touch on these people, to try to sell your ideas and find funding? Because obviously is slightly different than the traditional grant that is offered for the NIH, because in that grant you only have to show the importance of the idea and maybe relevance for the community. But when you are talking with enterprises, you also have to find some connection with their business side.
This is such a great question that everybody cares about at every career stage. So first, you know, this is always a struggle for me because our lab is very interdisciplinary at the junction of two different fields, right? Cancer and metabolism, obesity and immunity. And traditional study sections get very confused, or they don't like to fund complicated grants. So when we put in an NIH grant, they tend to be much more linear and in one area. And then we can combine kind of projects in the lab together to make them more physiological. And sometimes with companies, we can partner with the university to help find a space. Sometimes going to a conference is a really great way to interact with people from industry and understand maybe you have a chemical assay that the company is interested in, and maybe they would be interested in funding an arm of a project, right? I would just be wary of not doing contract work and always keeping availability to do your academic creativity and freedom. And that's why this grand challenge is so fantastic to bring people into the aging field. Does anyone have any other advice? Because I feel like I can always learn from this question.
So
yeah, go ahead.
You go ahead. I should let, I will follow next.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm a chemist, so I will just use my experience to raise a few questions that I saw in the last few years that might be helpful for other people. They say, well, we identify some longevity compounds, right? One of the major problems that we have is the university IP department. They don't believe it, even though there are very solid experimental evidence. Say those are longevity compounds. So the question come up, it's say, how those are protected by IP? That's one. The other one is, well, if you think about longevity, how are you going to do clinical trials, right? And then the other question is, what are the biomarkers? And if you say you identify compounds that will deal with aging-associated disease, I can't patent it because you just have animal experiments say, well, this increased lifespan will improve some of the phenotypes. But then we probably need another 10, 20 years to figure out how it works, right? So at this point, get IP protection from the university, it's just very, very difficult. I mean, if, for example, let's say as a new field, people, there are people with this grand challenge, there are more people coming in. And in order to get more people coming in, I think those are the ones that, without, I even get NIH review comments very bad to see, well, this is snake oil. Yeah, you see it work, but I don't know how it works. So I'm not going to give you a good score. Right, so I think that's probably whatever that comments that I got from either NIH review or from our OTD, it's probably the question that many of us are going to have in the coming years if there are some important results coming out.
This is such a great comment, and I hear so many aspects, to discuss here. There's a lot to discuss, and I also hear a lot of frustration from NIH grant reviews, which I share very much. I want to be a good moderator and actually ask some of the people who haven't spoken as much to comment on this if they would like to comment first.
Jacqueline, you wanted to comment, right?
Just a very short comment. We actually have started this work on the biomedical research plus AI just about 2 years ago. And I guess we try to work with the best people in the field of Alzheimer's disease, and we try to contribute our part on the AI, but we find it also very challenging to pick up all this knowledge in a very short period of time. Basically, there is no shortcut, and we have to learn how to build a common language between us and the neuroscientists. But we find it very fruitful, and Victor and also Marcia, is that the idea that we want to do some breakthrough research is actually not about research itself, it's to help those people in need. And with that passion, that actually drive us to learn a lot more. And we find that working with the like-minded people who share the similar visions, who are really expert in the field, will help us pull together an interdisciplinary team of people. And maybe that's why we need to work together today from different countries and different places where we could actually learn from each other and could speed up our learning curve. Yeah. Thank you.
That was great. Ricardo?
If I am allowed to say something else, because I like to build on what Jacqueline was saying, that is the importance of collaborations. Because something that I have noticed, at least on my short experience, is that, for example, I am in an academic institution and I have a research lab, but sometimes it's very difficult to have access to patients or populations. And that has been a tremendous limitation for me, because I can do animal work and cell culture work, but still, sometimes I need samples or some ways to address communities. Even for my literacy studies that I mentioned, those that are not biomedical, but mostly surveys to address the knowledge of patients, sometimes it's very difficult to get access to patients. So participating in opportunities such as this is fantastic, because then you can see people that have access to patients, but maybe they don't have expertise in the lab. So then you are able to assemble a collaboration there. Or maybe I'm interested in doing some artificial intelligence work with my data, that I don't have the expertise, but then somebody else have the expertise and is willing to put the effort to contribute there. But then there is also another limitation, that sometimes is profitability of the ideas, at least again on my experience, because I have a collaboration with a team in Southeast Asia, and something that has been difficult is that they have already assembled a product that is an app to provide mobile health to populations. So, but in order to use the app in my country, the app will have to have significant adjustments, and we are also proposing to build some other pieces of software on top of what is already there. But then the negotiation of what is already mine, what is yours, sometimes is a piece of a stone in the road that does not allow to move ahead with a major goal, that is to provide a service to community, because we are still debating on how to negotiate intellectual property. So those are the two pieces that I want to add. Victor.
Marcia, I just want to say a few words. I know time's running out, but thank you, Ricardo, Pinghua, Jacqueline, and of course, Ben, who's been part of this as well. I think this, first of all, you face, I would say what every investigator faces, whichever field you're in terms of funding, new ideas, etc. And of course, as we all recognize, by the way, I'm still an NIH-funded investigator and get my grants rejected like everybody else, that this is really part of the issue of trying to get funding. So Pinghua, this is why we started this whole initiative in saying, presumably all of you guys are the Catalyst Awardees, that we believe in your bold ideas. You don't need feasibility, preliminary data. So that will at least get you a starting point whereby you can convince your institution to file IP or to get to the next stage. Later on, you'll hear that we have this thing called Accelerator Award, and we're going to announce a whole bunch of them who get up to $500,000 for next level. And European Investment Bank is willing to put down millions for a great idea. So we're at least carving a pathway for you to think along those. We are discussing in deep conversation with a big foundation, which may extend this catalyst from 1 year, in the next round is 2 years, so that you have more time and a little more money, and expand this. But as you can see, it's working globally to bring as many people like yourself, at least to get started. Because starting is what you need, and when you have good data, even though it's not perfect, it allows you to really get the next stage. Your point about clinical studies are really true. They're very difficult to figure out what do you measure when you look at health span, and particularly looking at age, and these are long-term effects. They're very difficult issues. That's why biomarkers, many others, are also necessary. But I would say to you, there's tremendous momentum in this field. You probably just read recently about the new foundation that was started, an initiative by Urin and there's a Bezos and Rick Klausner and others. They talk about lots of money in trying to invest in places like yours. The other foundation I'm talking to is also talking about $1 billion coming to this field. So people recognizing that healthy longevity is really a big issue. So I would say hang in there because the field is opening up. You know, Marcia is one of those pioneers, but the field is really opening up and we believe in it. A few years ago, people would say, what? And now everybody wants to know how. So I just want to stop here and leave you guys back to your session. Thank you for leading it, Marcia. And thank you all of you for hanging in there and show us the great success in the future.
Thank you so much, Victor. Those were great and so inspirational as always.
Thank you,
See you
Victor.
later.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Victor. Thank you, Marcia.
To everyone.
Yes. I just want to add, so I put my email here in the chat, and you guys can also, you probably have each other's emails from the program book, but you guys can reach out to me at any time. And I would be happy to talk about specific projects or even read grants or look at grants and give you edits and comments, things like that. I've also had my share of grants be triaged or fail. And it's just, you just have to keep going. Like a scientist has to be an optimist, right? In a certain way. I think what's exciting about this program also is the fact that it's bringing people together globally, right? So in this one session, we have people from all over the world at different career stages. It's incredibly exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia.
Yeah, thank you guys. Any last comments or?
Yeah, thank you very much. I might contact you by email.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
Please do. I was part of the NAM, the National Academy of Medicine Emerging Leaders Program. And I would also encourage you to look at that program. If you're it was, I think, in an earlier career stage, and it really helped me in my career and promotion, you know, along my academic career trajectory. I think that the NAM is incredibly inclusive and helpful in connecting with mentors and other people. And Victor really cares about young people's careers and also really the next frontiers of science.
Thank you, Marcia. You are
Thank you,
very
Marcia.
encouraging too. Thank you for your fantastic presentation. And thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was so fun. This was wonderful.
You guys.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.